The summer sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange glow over the quiet suburban streets of Willow Creek. It was the kind of picturesque town where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. On the surface, the Jones family seemed like any other. Susan, the hard-working single mother, and her two daughters, Mia and Emily. But beneath the surface lay a simmering tension, one that would soon erupt in a way that no one in town could ignore. Mia, the older sister, had always carried the weight of responsibility. At 19, she was the one who babysat Emily when their father left, who worked part-time to help their mom pay bills, and who gave up her dream of going to an out-of-state college to stay close to home. At first, she didn't mind. She loved her little sister, even if Emily, at 16, was everything she wasn't: bubbly, optimistic, and effortlessly charming. But over time, resentment began to creep in. It wasn't just that Emily seemed to excel at everything she touched. It was that everyone noticed. The final straw came when Emily won the Willow Creek Scholarship, a prestigious local award given to one student each year for academic excellence and community service. Mia had tried for the same scholarship 3 years earlier and didn't even make the final round. The news spread like wildfire, with neighbors stopping Susan at the grocery store to congratulate her and teachers praising Emily during church announcements. Mia tried to smile through it, but every mention of Emily's success felt like a slap in the face. The family celebrated the scholarship win with a modest dinner at home. Susan beamed with pride, her eyes glistening as she toasted Emily. "To my little star," she said, raising her glass of sparkling cider. Emily blushed, looking down at her plate. "Thanks, Mom. But it's really not that big of a deal." "Not a big deal," Susan interrupted, laughing. "Emily, this is huge. You've made this family so proud." Mia, sitting across the table, stabbed at her salad. "Yeah, Emily, you're practically perfect," she muttered under her breath. Emily looked up, her smile faltering. "What's that supposed to mean?" Mia shrugged, her voice sharper now. "It means you've got everything handed to you on a silver platter, while the rest of us have to work twice as hard." Susan's smile faded. "Mia, that's enough." "Is it, though?" Maya snapped, pushing her chair back and standing up. "I'm sick of everyone acting like Emily's some kind of saint. She's not. She's just lucky." Emily's eyes welled up with tears. "Why are you saying this? I didn't do anything to you." "Exactly," Maya said, her voice breaking. "You never do anything, and yet everyone treats you like you're better than me." With that, Maya stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Susan and Emily sat in stunned silence, the celebration ruined. The next few days were tense. Mia avoided Emily as much as possible, retreating to her room or leaving the house early to avoid breakfast together. Emily tried to apologize, though she wasn't sure what for, but Mia brushed her off. Susan, caught in the middle, didn't know how to mend the growing rift between her daughters. The situation came to a head at the Willow Creek Summer Festival, an annual event where the whole town gathered for food, games, and live music. Emily was set to receive formal recognition for her scholarship during the opening ceremony, and Susan insisted that Mia come along to support her sister. Maya reluctantly agreed, though she regretted it the moment they arrived. The festival was buzzing with excitement, and everywhere Maya turned, people were talking about Emily. "There she is," one woman exclaimed, pointing to Emily as the family walked by. "The scholarship winner. Such a bright young girl." Mia clenched her jaw, her fists tightening at her sides. When they reached the stage area, the mayor was already speaking, listing Emily's achievements. Mia stood in the back, arms crossed as Emily walked onto the stage to accept her award. The crowd erupted into applause, and Emily gave a shy smile, clutching the microphone. "I just want to thank my mom," Emily began, her voice trembling. "She's the reason I'm standing here today. And my sister, Mia." Mia's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't expecting to be mentioned. "For always being someone I look up to." I wouldn't be who I am without her." The crowd clapped again, but Mia's face burned with anger. To her, Emily's words felt like an attempt to look humble, to gain even more admiration from the crowd. She couldn't take it anymore. As Emily stepped off the stage, Mia marched forward, grabbing the microphone from the mayor's hand. The crowd fell silent, eyes widening in shock. "Let's give a big round of applause for Emily, everyone," Maya said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "The perfect little sister who can do no wrong. But here's the thing. You all don't know the real Emily. She's not as innocent as she looks." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Susan rushed toward the stage, her face pale. "Mia, stop this right now," she hissed. But Mia wasn't finished. "She acts like she's so sweet and hardworking, but she doesn't lift a finger at home. Mom's the one who does everything, and I'm the one who's sacrificed for this family." Meanwhile, Emily just smiles and takes all the credit. Emily stood frozen at the side of the stage, her eyes wide with tears streaming down her face. The crowd looked on in stunned silence, unsure of how to react. "Mia," Susan said, her voice shaking. "Enough." For a moment, it seemed like Mia might keep going. But then she looked at Emily, really looked at her, and saw the hurt in her sister's eyes. Suddenly, the anger that had fueled her melted away, replaced by a sinking feeling of regret. Without another word, Mia dropped the microphone and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. The rest of the festival was a blur. Emily left early, escorted by Susan, who was too embarrassed to stay. The gossip spread quickly, with neighbors whispering about the family drama and speculating about what might happen next. That night, Mia sat alone in her room, staring at the ceiling. She replayed the events of the day over and over in her mind, the weight of what she'd done pressing down on her. For years, she'd felt invisible, overshadowed by her sister. But now, for the first time, she wondered if maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe Emily wasn't the enemy. Maybe Mia's real problem was herself. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. What happened next would force both sisters to confront truths they'd been avoiding for years, and their relationship, and their family, would never be the same. The night after the festival was eerily quiet in the Jones household. Susan had gone to bed early, emotionally drained from the public spectacle. Emily's door remained shut, the faint sound of muffled sobs audible to anyone who passed by. Maya sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the day pressing down on her. The anger she had carried for so long was gone, replaced by a gnawing sense of regret. But she couldn't shake the thought that no one really understood how she felt, least of all Emily. The next morning, Mia woke to the smell of pancakes wafting through the house. It was an unusual gesture from Susan, who typically reserved such efforts for birthdays or holidays. Still, Mia stayed in her room, unsure if she could face her family just yet. Eventually, hunger got the better of her, and she ventured into the kitchen. Emily was already at the table, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She didn't look up as Mia entered. Susan stood at the stove, her movements stiff and silent. The tension in the room was suffocating. Mia cleared her throat. "Morning." Susan turned slightly, her face devoid of its usual warmth. "Morning," she replied curtly. "There are pancakes. Help yourself." Mia hesitated, then grabbed a plate and sat down across from Emily. She picked at her food, stealing glances at her sister, who pushed her pancakes around her plate without eating. I didn't mean for it to go that far," Maya finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily looked up, her expression a mix of hurt and anger. "Didn't mean for it to go that far. You humiliated me in front of the entire town, Mia. What did you think would happen?" Mia flinched at Emily's words but didn't respond. What could she say? She had crossed a line, and there was no taking it back. Susan slammed the spatula onto the counter, making both girls jump. "Enough," she said, her voice sharp. "I've had it with this. Mia, you owe your sister an apology. A real one." Mia swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," she said, though it sounded hollow even to her own ears. Emily shook her head. "No, you're not. You don't get it, Mia. You don't understand how much it hurt to hear you say those things. How much it still hurts." Mia opened her mouth to respond but stopped herself. She didn't understand. Not really. All she knew was her own pain, her own sense of being overlooked. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe she had been so focused on her own feelings that she had failed to see anyone else's. The rest of the day passed in a blur of silence. Maya retreated to her room, trying to sort through the whirlwind of emotions inside her. She thought about the years of resentment she had carried, the moments when she had felt invisible, the sacrifices she had made for the family. But for the first time, she also thought about Emily, not as the perfect, golden child everyone else saw, but as a person with her own struggles and feelings. As the sun began to set, Mia decided she couldn't stay cooped up any longer. She grabbed her jacket and headed out, needing some air. The streets of Willow Creek were quiet, the events of the festival already fading from the town's collective memory. But for Mia, the weight of what had happened lingered like a storm cloud. She wandered aimlessly until she found herself at the edge of the park where the festival had taken place. The stage was still there, though the decorations had been taken down. Maya stood in front of it, replaying the moment when she had grabbed the microphone and unleashed her anger. She remembered the look on Emily's face, the way her sister's smile had crumbled. It was a look Maya would never forget. "Didn't think I'd see you here," a voice said behind her. Mia turned to see Mrs. Holloway, one of the town's most outspoken residents and a longtime friend of their family. She was holding a bag of leftover festival flyers, her sharp eyes studying Mia. "Hi, Mrs. Holloway," Maya said, her voice lacking enthusiasm. The older woman walked closer, her expression unreadable. "I heard about what happened yesterday," she said. "The whole town did." Mia sighed. "Yeah, I figured." Mrs. Holloway set down her bag and crossed her arms. "You've got a lot of people talking, you know. Some of them think you were out of line. Others think you might have had a point." Mia blinked. "A point? About what?" Mrs. Holloway shrugged. "About how people treat Emily. She's a bright kid, sure, but maybe folks have been a little too quick to put her on a pedestal. That kind of thing can make life harder for everyone involved, including Emily." Mia frowned. She hadn't considered that. I felt like no one saw me, you know. Like I was just there to fill the gaps while Emily got all the attention." Mrs. Holloway nodded slowly. "I get that. But here's the thing. You and Emily are in this together, whether you like it or not. Family isn't about keeping score. It's about showing up for each other, even when it's hard." Mia looked away, her eyes stinging. "I don't know how to fix it. I think I really messed up." Mrs. Holloway smiled faintly. "You did, but it's not too late. The question is, are you willing to do the work to make things right?" Mia didn't answer, but the question stayed with her as she walked home. When she got back, the house was dark and quiet. Susan and Emily had already gone to bed. Maya stood in the hallway, staring at Emily's closed door. She thought about knocking but decided against it. Instead, she went to her own room and spent the night thinking about how to fix what she had broken. The next morning, Mia woke early and made a decision. She couldn't undo the past, but she could try to make amends. She started by cleaning the kitchen, something Susan usually did on her own. Then she cooked breakfast, not just cereal or toast, but a full meal with eggs, bacon, and pancakes. By the time Susan and Emily came downstairs, the table was set, and the smell of food filled the air. "What's all this?" Susan asked, her eyebrows raised. Mia shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Just thought I'd do something nice. You know, to make up for everything." Emily hesitated at the doorway, her expression guarded. "Thanks," she said softly, sitting down at the table. They ate in relative silence, but the atmosphere felt less tense than the day before. After breakfast, Maya turned to Emily. Can we talk? Alone. Emily looked uncertain but nodded. They went to the backyard, where the morning sun cast long shadows across the grass. Maya took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. Look, I know I messed up, she began. I was jealous, and I let it get the better of me. But the truth is, it wasn't really about you. It was about me feeling like I didn't matter as much. And that's not your fault. Emily's eyes softened. Mia, I never wanted you to feel that way. I've always looked up to you. You're my big sister. You're the one who's been there for me, even when I didn't realize it. Mia blinked back tears. I don't want us to keep fighting. I want to be better. For you, for Mom, for all of us. Emily smiled faintly. Me too. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. For the first time in a long time, Mia felt like they were on the same team. And as they stood there in the morning light, the weight of the past began to lift, replaced by the hope of a better future. The days following Mia and Emily's heartfelt conversation were a tentative but hopeful truce. Though the air between them was less heavy, their bond remained fragile, like a cracked vase that had been hastily glued back together. Mia knew that a simple apology wasn't enough to erase the hurt she'd caused, and Emily, despite her words of forgiveness, seemed guarded. Both sisters tread carefully, navigating their way through a newfound understanding, while trying not to fall back into old patterns. The turning point came one evening when Susan received an unexpected phone call. Mia was in her room scrolling through her phone, and Emily was at the dining table doing homework. Susan's voice, usually calm, carried an edge of worry that made both girls pause. Wait, what do you mean she's missing? Susan said, pacing the living room. Her words immediately drew Emily's attention, and Mia poked her head out of her bedroom door. Mom, what's going on? Maya asked. Susan held up a hand, signaling for silence. We'll do whatever we can to help. Please keep us updated, she said before hanging up the phone. Turning to her daughters, she sighed heavily. That was Mrs. Holloway. Her granddaughter, Lily, didn't come home from school today. Mia's heart sank. Lily was only 12, a quiet, bookish girl who often visited the library where Mia used to work part-time. She couldn't imagine Lily running away or getting into trouble. What do you mean she didn't come home? Emily asked, her voice tinged with concern. Susan shook her head. She was supposed to walk back with a friend, but no one's seen her since school let out. They've called the police, but Mrs. Holloway is asking neighbors to help look for her. Mia and Emily exchanged a glance. Without needing to say a word, they both grabbed their jackets and followed Susan out the door. The community search effort was already underway by the time they reached the park where Lily was last seen. Flashlights cut through the darkness as groups of neighbors combed the area, calling out Lily's name. Maya and Emily joined a small group led by Mrs. Holloway herself, who looked frazzled but determined. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Holloway said, her voice trembling. Lily loves this park. I thought maybe she'd come here to read or sit by the pond. We'll find her, Maya said with more confidence than she felt. Emily nodded in agreement, clutching a flashlight tightly. As they searched, Mia couldn't help but reflect on how much the community had rallied around Mrs. Holloway. The same neighbors who had whispered about the Jones family's drama at the festival were now working together, united by a shared purpose. It struck Mia how small grievances seemed trivial in the face of something truly important. The search stretched late into the night with no sign of Lily. Susan eventually sent Emily home, but Maya refused to leave. She trailed behind Mrs. Holloway, who was now walking with a limp from hours of scouring the uneven terrain. Mrs. Holloway, you should rest, Maya said, placing a hand on the woman's arm. I can't rest, Mrs. Holloway replied, her voice cracking. Not until I know she's safe. Mia hesitated, then made a decision. Let me check the library. Lily loves it there, and it's not far from here. If she's hiding somewhere, it could be inside. Mrs. Holloway gave a weak nod. Thank you, Mia. Mia set off toward the library, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The streets were eerily empty, the usually quiet town now unnervingly silent. When she reached the library, she found the front doors locked. She circled the building, peering through windows and calling Lily's name. As she rounded the corner to the back entrance, she noticed something odd. A faint glow coming from inside. Pressing her face against the glass, she spotted a small figure huddled in a corner with a flashlight and a stack of books. Relief washed over her. "Lily," Mia called out, knocking on the window. The figure jumped, then slowly turned to face her. It was Lily, her face pale and tear-streaked. Mia quickly called Mrs. Holloway, who burst into tears of gratitude upon hearing the news. She assured Mrs. Holloway that Lily was safe and waited for the police and Mrs. Holloway to arrive before approaching Lily. In the meantime, Mia crouched by the window, speaking softly to the scared girl. "Lily, it's me, Mia. You're safe now. Your grandma's on her way." Lily nodded but didn't move. "I didn't mean to make everyone worry," she said in a small voice. I didn't want to go home." Mia frowned. "Why not?" Lily hesitated, then whispered, "It's hard to explain. I just feel like I don't belong anywhere." Mia's chest tightened. She knew that feeling all too well. "I get it," she said gently. "But running away doesn't solve anything. It just makes the people who care about you worry. And trust me, Lily, there are a lot of people who care about you." By the time Mrs. Holloway arrived, Lily had unlocked the door and stepped outside. Mrs. Holloway hugged her granddaughter tightly, sobbing into her hair. Mia stepped back, giving them space, but Mrs. Holloway turned to her, with tears streaming down her face. "You found her," she said. "You saved her." Mia shook her head. "She saved herself. I just got lucky." The events of that night had a ripple effect on the community. The next day, Susan received countless phone calls from neighbors thanking Mia for her efforts. Even the mayor stopped by to commend her. For once, Mia found herself in the spotlight, though she felt undeserving of the praise. All she had done was follow her instincts. But the most surprising reaction came from Emily. That evening, as they sat together on the couch, Emily turned to Mia with a thoughtful expression. "You were amazing last night," Emily said. "The way you stayed calm and talked to Lily. I don't think I could have done that." Mia shrugged. "It wasn't a big deal." "It was," Emily insisted. "You made her feel safe. That's not something everyone can do." Mia looked at her sister, unsure how to respond. For the first time, she saw admiration in Emily's eyes, not the kind born out of obligation, but genuine respect. It was a look Mia had longed for without even realizing it. As the days passed, Mia and Emily found themselves spending more time together, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They began working on small projects around the house, helping Susan fix up the garden and repaint the living room. It was during one of these afternoons that Emily brought up an idea. "I was thinking," Emily said as she pulled weeds from the flower bed, "about organizing a community event." Mia raised an eyebrow. "Another festival? Didn't we already have enough drama at the last one?" Emily laughed. "Not a festival. Something smaller, like a fundraiser. We could donate the money to the library or use it to start a scholarship for kids like Lily." Mia paused, considering the idea. "That's actually a really good idea. But why do you want to do it?" Emily's expression softened. "Because I want to show people that even small acts can make a big difference, and because I think it would be good for us to work on something together." Mia felt a lump form in her throat. "Yeah," she said, her voice thick. "I think it would be good for us too." Over the next few weeks, the sisters threw themselves into planning the fundraiser. They reached out to local businesses for donations, created flyers, and enlisted the help of their friends and neighbors. As word spread, the event gained momentum, and soon it became the talk of the town. On the day of the fundraiser, The community center was packed with people. There were bake sales, raffles, and even a small performance by the local school band. Maya and Emily worked side by side, their bond growing stronger with each shared laugh and moment of teamwork. As the event wound down, Maya took a moment to step outside and catch her breath. She looked out at the crowd, watching as people laughed and chatted, united by a common cause. For the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. Emily joined her, holding 2 cups of lemonade. "We did good," she said, handing Mia a cup. Mia nodded. "We did." The sisters stood in silence for a moment, sipping their drinks and soaking in the atmosphere. Finally, Mia turned to Emily and said, "I'm proud of you, you know. Not just for the scholarship, but for everything. You're a good person, Em." Emily smiled, her eyes shining with unused tears. "I'm proud of you too, Mia. You're stronger than you realize." And for the first time, Mia believed it. Together, they had taken the broken pieces of their relationship and built something new, something stronger. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was all that mattered. The fundraiser had been a resounding success, raising more money than either Mia or Emily had anticipated. The local library received a significant donation, and the leftover funds were put into a scholarship program to help students like Lily feel supported and valued. The event left the town buzzing with excitement, and for the first time in years, Maya felt genuinely proud of something she had accomplished. But even as the glow of the event lingered, life had a way of testing how far the sisters had truly come. It started with a single envelope. One afternoon, Mia came home from her shift at the local coffee shop to find Susan sitting at the dining table with an envelope in her hands. Her face was pale, her fingers gripping the edges of the paper tightly. "What's that?" Maya asked, dropping her bag on the floor. Susan looked up, her eyes filled with a mix of pride and sadness. "It's from the state university. You got in, Mia. They're offering you a partial scholarship." For a moment, Mia couldn't process the words. She had applied to the university months ago, more as a formality than anything else. She hadn't expected to get in, let alone receive a scholarship. Her mind raced with possibilities, dreams she had long buried stirring to life. But just as quickly, reality set in. "Partial scholarship," Maya repeated, her voice flat. "That means there's still a lot left to pay, doesn't it?" Susan nodded, her expression tight. "We'd have to figure it out. Maybe you could take out some loans, and I could work extra hours." Mia shook her head. "No, Mom, you're already doing enough. I can't ask you to do more." At that moment, Emily walked in, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She took one look at their faces and immediately knew something was up. "What's going on?" Susan handed her the letter. Emily's eyes scanned the page, and her face lit up. "Mia, this is amazing. You got into the university. That's such a big deal." Mia shrugged, trying to downplay it. "It's not that big of a deal if I can't afford to go." Emily frowned. "But this is your dream, isn't it? There has to be a way to make it work." Mia didn't respond. She didn't want to admit how much she wanted this, how desperately she had dreamed of escaping the small town and building a life for herself. She had spent so long convincing herself that her dreams didn't matter, that she wasn't sure how to fight for them now. The next few days were filled with tension as the family tried to figure out a solution. Susan made phone calls to financial aid offices and local organizations, but the numbers never seemed to add up. Mia considered taking on a second job, but even that wouldn't cover the remaining costs. The more they talked about it, the more impossible it seemed. One evening, as Mia sat on the couch staring at the acceptance letter, Emily walked in and sat beside her. "You're really thinking about not going, aren't you?" Emily asked quietly. Mia sighed. "It's not about what I want, Em. It's about what's realistic. I can't put Mom in more debt just because I want to leave this town." Emily was silent for a moment, then said, "What if there was a way for you to go without putting all the pressure on Mom?" Mia frowned. What do you mean? Emily hesitated, then took a deep breath. I've been thinking. I don't really need the scholarship money I got. We could transfer it to you. Between that and the partial scholarship, it might be enough. Mia stared at her, stunned. Emily, that money is yours. You earned it. Emily shrugged. I earned it, sure, but I don't need it as much as you do. I'm still in high school, and I can figure things out later. You're the one who has this chance right now. Mia shook her head vehemently. I can't let you do that. It's not fair to you. Emily reached out and took Mia's hand. What's not fair is you giving up on your dreams because you're too proud to accept help. You've always been the one sacrificing for this family, Mia. Maybe it's time someone else did something for you. Tears pricked Mia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Emily, I don't even know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Emily said with a small smile. That's all I'm asking. Mia nodded, though the thought of accepting Emily's offer made her stomach twist with guilt. That night, she lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling and wrestling with her thoughts. She wanted so badly to go, to prove to herself that she was capable of more. But could she really let Emily give up her scholarship for her? The decision weighed on her for days, until an unexpected encounter shifted her perspective. Mia was working her usual shift at the coffee shop when Mrs. Holloway walked in. The older woman ordered her usual tea and lingered at the counter, her sharp eyes studying Mia. You've been quiet lately, Mrs. Holloway said, breaking the silence. Something on your mind? Mia hesitated, then decided to be honest. I got into the state university, but I don't think I can afford to go. Mrs. Holloway raised an eyebrow. And you're just going to give up? It's not that simple, Mia said, her voice defensive. There's more to consider than just what I want. Mrs. Holloway leaned on the counter, her expression thoughtful. You know, Mia, I used to think the same way. When I was your age, I had dreams of becoming a writer. But life got in the way, and I told myself it wasn't meant to be. I spent decades wondering what might have been if I'd fought a little harder. Mia swallowed hard. But what if it's selfish to fight for it? Mrs. Holloway shook her head. It's not selfish to want something, Mia. It's human. And sometimes the people who love us the most want us to fight for ourselves, even if we don't see it. Her words stuck with Mia as she finished her shift and walked home. That night, as she sat at the kitchen table with Emily, she made her decision. Okay, Mia said, her voice steady. If you're sure about this, I'll accept the scholarship transfer, but only if you promise me one thing. Emily tilted her head. What's that? When it's your turn, you don't hold back. You go after your dreams with everything you've got. Deal? Emily smiled and held out her pinky. Deal. The next few weeks were a whirlwind as the paperwork was finalized and Mia prepared for her move to the university. The whole town seemed to rally around her, offering support and encouragement. Mrs. Holloway even threw a small farewell party at the library, where Mia received heartfelt messages from friends and neighbors. When the day finally came for Mia to leave, the family stood together on the front porch, exchanging hugs and goodbyes. Susan's eyes were filled with tears, but her smile was radiant. I'm so proud of you, Mia, she said, pulling her daughter into a tight embrace. Go out there and show the world what you're made of. Mia nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She turned to Emily, who was trying to hold back her own tears. I'll miss you, Emily said, but I know you're going to do amazing things. You too, Mia replied. Don't let anyone tell you you're anything less than incredible. As Mia drove away, her heart was heavy with the weight of leaving, but also light with the knowledge that she wasn't alone. Her family had her back, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly seen. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but Mia was ready to face it. And as she watched the town fade into the distance, she realized that her dreams weren't just hers anymore. They belonged to everyone who had believed in her, including the little sister who had given her the courage to fight for them. Mia's first few weeks at the university were a whirlwind of excitement, nerves, and adjustment. The sprawling campus was a stark contrast to the cozy familiarity of Willow Creek. Here, she was surrounded by thousands of students, each with their own stories, ambitions, and challenges. The anonymity was both exhilarating and intimidating. For the first time in her life, Mia had the chance to define herself without the shadow of family expectations or small-town gossip. Yet, despite the fresh start, she often found herself thinking of Emily, Susan, and the home she'd left behind. Initially, Mia struggled to find her footing. Her classes were more demanding than anything she had experienced before, and the weight of her scholarship added an extra layer of pressure. She often stayed up late poring over textbooks and lecture notes, determined not to waste the opportunity Emily had helped secure for her. However, the more she immersed herself in her studies, the more she realized how much she loved learning. The spark of curiosity she had buried under years of responsibility began to reignite, and she found herself thriving in ways she hadn't expected. Still, adjusting to campus life wasn't without its challenges. Mia's dorm roommate, Kara, was outgoing and confident, the kind of person who could walk into a room and make friends instantly. At first, Mia invited her. Kara seemed to glide through life effortlessly, while Mia felt like she was constantly stumbling. But Kara's warmth and persistence eventually broke through Mia's shyness, and the two quickly became close friends. One evening, as they sat in their dorm room eating takeout and procrastinating on homework, Kara asked, "So, what made you decide to come here? You're obviously smart, but you don't strike me as the type who always had this planned out." Mia hesitated, unsure how much to share. "It's a long story," she said, poking at her noodles with a pair of chopsticks. "I've got time," Kara replied with a grin. Mia sighed, then told her about Emily, the scholarship, and the sacrifices her family had made to get her here. By the time she finished, Kara was staring at her, wide-eyed. "Wow," Kara said. "Your sister must really love you." "She does," Mia admitted, her voice soft. "And I love her. But sometimes I feel guilty, like I'm taking something that should have been hers." Kara shook her head. "Don't think of it that way. She gave you a gift because she believed in you. The best thing you can do is make the most of it." Mia nodded, though the guilt still lingered in the back of her mind. She tried to push it aside and focus on her studies, but a part of her always felt like she was carrying Emily's dreams alongside her own. Back in Willow Creek, Emily was adjusting to life without Mia. The house felt quieter, emptier, without her sister's presence. Susan tried to fill the void with conversations and shared activities, but Emily often found herself retreating into her own thoughts. She missed Mia more than she had expected, and while she was proud of her sister, she couldn't help but feel a pang of envy every time she saw photos of Mia on campus or heard about her achievements. One afternoon, Emily decided to channel her energy into something productive. She began volunteering at the library, helping organize events and tutoring younger students. It reminded her of the fundraiser she and Mia had planned together, and she found comfort in the sense of purpose it gave her. The library became her refuge, a place where she could focus on others and momentarily forget her own insecurities. During one of her shifts, Emily noticed Lily sitting alone in a corner, her nose buried in a book. It had been months since the night Mia had found her, but Lily still seemed withdrawn and quiet. Emily approached her cautiously, sitting down across from her. "Hey, Lily," Emily said gently. "What are you reading?" Lily looked up, her eyes wary. "It's a fantasy book, about a girl who has to save her kingdom." "Sounds cool," Emily said with a smile. You kind of remind me of the main character in stories like that. Strong, brave, and capable of doing big things." Lily blinked, clearly taken aback. "Me? Brave?" "Yeah," Emily said. "Running away was scary, but you came back and faced everything. That takes courage." Lily didn't respond right away, but her expression softened. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Lily developed a quiet friendship. Emily became a mentor of sorts, encouraging Lily to speak up more and embrace her unique qualities. In helping Lily, Emily began to see herself in a new light, realizing that she had her own strengths and abilities separate from Mia's shadow. Meanwhile, back at the university, Maya received an unexpected email from the university's mentorship program. They were looking for student mentors to help incoming freshmen navigate campus life, and one of Mia's professors had recommended her for the role. At first, Mia was hesitant. She didn't feel qualified to mentor anyone, still grappling with her own challenges. But the professor's faith in her gave her a boost of confidence, and she decided to give it a try. Mia's first mentee was a shy freshman named Claire, who reminded her a little of Emily. Claire was struggling to adjust to college life and often doubted her abilities. Over time, Mia shared her own struggles and insecurities, encouraging Claire to take things one step at a time. In helping Claire, Mia discovered a passion for guiding others, something she hadn't realized she possessed. As the weeks turned into months, Mia and Emily's lives continued to evolve in parallel, each sister growing in her own way. They stayed in touch through phone calls and video chats, sharing updates about their lives. Mia often told Emily about her classes and her work as a mentor, while Emily shared stories about her time at the library and her friendship with Lily. Their bond, though stretched by distance, remained strong. One evening, during a particularly long phone call, Emily said something that stuck with Mia. "You know, I used to think I had to compete with you," Emily admitted, "like I had to prove I was just as good or better. But now I realize we're not competing at all. We're just different, and that's okay." Mia smiled, her chest swelling with affection for her sister. "I used to feel the same way, but you're right. We're different, and that's what makes us both special." Their conversation ended with laughter and promises to visit each other soon. For the first time, Mia felt truly at peace with her relationship with Emily. They were no longer rivals or opposites. They were two halves of the same whole, each carving out their own path while supporting the other. As the semester drew to a close, Maya received another piece of surprising news. She had been nominated for a leadership award for her work as a mentor. The recognition was unexpected, but it filled her with a sense of accomplishment she hadn't felt in years. She called Susan and Emily to share the news, their pride and excitement echoing through the phone. "You deserve this, Mia," Emily said. "You've worked so hard, and I couldn't be prouder." Hearing those words from Emily meant more to Mia than the award itself. It was a reminder of how far they had both come, not just individually but together. By the time Maya returned home for winter break, she was a different person. Confident, driven, and more self-assured, she walked through the front door with a renewed sense of purpose. Emily greeted her with a tight hug, their laughter filling the house like it hadn't in months. As they sat together that evening, reminiscing about the past year, Maya looked at her sister and smiled. "You know, Em, I think we make a pretty good team." Emily grinned. "We always have. We just didn't realize it until now." And in that moment, Mia knew that no matter where life took them, their bond would remain unbreakable. They had faced their struggles, their fears, and their insecurities, emerging stronger and more connected than ever. Together, they had turned their family's story into one of resilience, growth, and love. A story that would continue to unfold, chapter by chapter, for years to come. Winter break brought a sense of calm and nostalgia to the Jones household. For the first time in months, Mia was back in her childhood home, and the sight of familiar walls and the smell of Susan's cooking wrapped her in a comforting embrace. Emily, too, seemed lighter and more carefree, her bond with Mia stronger than it had been in years. The family spent the first few days of Mia's return catching up, laughing over old memories and sharing stories about their recent experiences. But the peaceful holiday was only the calm before an unexpected storm, one that would test the family's newfound unity in ways they couldn't anticipate. It all began on a chilly December evening. The three of them were gathered in the living room, sipping hot chocolate and watching an old holiday movie when the phone rang. Susan answered it, her cheerful tone quickly turning serious as she listened. Maya and Emily exchanged a glance, their curiosity piqued. When Susan hung up, her face was pale, and her hands trembled slightly as she set the phone down. "That was Mrs. Holloway," Susan said, sinking onto the couch. "She said the city council is planning to close the library." "What?" Emily's voice was sharp with disbelief. "They can't do that. The library is so important to this town." Susan nodded grimly. "Apparently, they claim it's not getting enough funding or visitors to justify keeping it open. They want to repurpose the building for something else." Mia frowned. "That doesn't make any sense. The library is always busy, especially with the programs Emily's been helping with." Emily's face was a mixture of anger and determination. "We can't let this happen. The library isn't just about books. It's a safe space for so many people. Lily practically lives there now, and there are kids who rely on it for tutoring and resources they don't have at home." Mia leaned forward, her mind already racing. "There has to be something we can do. Protests, petitions, fundraising. Anything to show the council how much the library matters." Susan sighed. "It won't be easy. The council has already made up its mind, and they're meeting in a week to finalize the decision." The room fell silent as the weight of the situation sank in. But then Emily spoke, her voice steady and filled with resolve. "We're not giving up. We've faced worse, and we've come out stronger. If we can show the council how much the library means to this community, they'll have to listen." Mia nodded, a spark of determination igniting within her. "You're right. We've got 1 week to make as much noise as possible." The next morning, the Jones family sprang into action. Emily started by creating a petition, using her connections at the library to spread the word. Mia contacted Kara and other friends from the university, asking for advice on organizing a campaign. Susan reached out to local businesses, hoping to rally support from the town's leaders. Emily and Mia spent hours brainstorming strategies. They decided to host a Save the Library rally on the weekend, inviting townspeople to share their stories about how the library had impacted their lives. Mia also suggested creating a video campaign, highlighting testimonials from community members. "People need to see the faces behind a library," Mia explained. "It's not just a building. It's a lifeline for so many." Emily agreed and immediately got to work interviewing library patrons. Lily was one of the first to volunteer, her shy voice carrying a surprising weight as she described how the library had become her sanctuary. "It's the only place where I feel like I belong," she said softly, her words resonating with everyone who heard them. As the week progressed, the campaign gained momentum. Flyers were distributed, social media posts went viral, and the petition garnered hundreds of signatures. The rally, held in the library's parking lot, drew a larger crowd than anyone had anticipated. People of all ages showed up, holding signs and chanting slogans like "Save our library" and "Books build communities." Mia and Emily stood at the front of the crowd, their hearts swelling with pride as they watched the town come together. When it was their turn to speak, Maya stepped up to the microphone first. "This library isn't just a place to borrow books," Mia began, her voice clear and passionate. "It's where kids discover a love for reading, where students find a quiet space to study, and where people like Lily," she gestured toward the young girl in the front row, "find a sense of belonging." Closing it would mean taking away more than just a building. It would mean taking away hope, opportunity, and community. The crowd erupted into applause, and when it died down, Emily took the microphone. "I grew up in this library," Emily said, her voice shaking slightly but growing stronger with every word. "It's where I learned to dream big, where I met people who inspired me, and where I realized the power of knowledge. If we let the library close, we're sending a message that those things don't matter. But they do. They matter more than anything." By the time the rally ended, the mood was electric. People stayed late into the evening, brainstorming additional ways to support the cause. Local news outlets covered the event, further spreading the campaign's message. The day before the city council meeting, Mrs. Holloway called Susan with an update. "They've noticed," she said, her voice filled with hope. "The council is paying attention, but they're still undecided. We need one last push." The family gathered around the kitchen table that night, strategizing their next move. Finally, they decided that Emily and Mia would attend the council meeting to present their case directly. "You two are the heart of this campaign," Susan said. "If anyone can sway them, it's you." The council meeting was packed, with standing room only. Emily and Mia sat near the front, clutching notes they had rehearsed endlessly. When it was their turn to speak, they stood together, their voices steady despite the weight of the moment. Emily spoke first, recounting the impact the library had on her life and the lives of others in the community. "This isn't just about saving a building," she concluded. "It's about preserving a place that gives people hope and opportunity." Mia followed, drawing on her experience as a mentor and her newfound confidence. "I'm here because someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself," she said. "The library is a place where people learn to believe in themselves. If you take it away, you're taking away that chance for so many." When they finished, the room erupted into applause. The council members exchanged glances, clearly moved by the sisters' words. After what felt like an eternity, the council announced their decision. The library would remain open, with additional funding allocated to expand its programs. The room exploded into cheers, and tears streamed down Emily's face as she hugged Mia tightly. In the weeks that followed, the sisters became local heroes, their campaign a symbol of what could be achieved through unity and determination. The library thrived, introducing new programs and drawing in even more visitors. Lily, inspired by Emily and Mia, started a book club for kids her age, her confidence growing with every meeting. Maya returned to the university with a renewed sense of purpose, her heart full from the experience. Emily, too, felt transformed, her work at the library giving her a newfound confidence in her abilities. One evening, as they sat together during a video call, Maya said, "You know, Em, I think this whole thing showed me something." "What's that?" Emily asked, smiling. "That when we work together, there's nothing we can't do." Emily nodded, her smile widening. "You're right. We're a pretty unstoppable team." As their call ended, both sisters felt a sense of gratitude, not just for the victory they had achieved, but for the bond they had rebuilt. Their journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also been filled with growth, love, and the realization that they were stronger together than they could ever be apart. And as they looked to the future, they knew it would be one they would face side by side, ready for whatever came next.